time here, I would like to talk about education in Singapore. Now, basically, in our Singapore law that requires all the those ages 6 and above, ages 6 or 7, they actually attend primary school. This law is actually compulsory, so as to give them basic education, so for more life skills, and work skills for the future. So I'm not going to talk about primary school in general because it's too, every subject is very general. It starts with basically they will learn basic language skills, basic maths, critical thinking, and they will learn science as well, basic science, chemistry, biology, and physics. So let's move on to secondary school. Now, in lower secondary, we basically learn, humanities subjects, which are exposed in secondary 1, basically in the express and normal academic streams. So they'll learn stuff like literature, where they actually appreciate drama and text, and also geography more connected to our physical and human, more connected to our world. It's a more relevant subject, and it's actually they will study things like physical geography, human geography, and they are always interconnected. And there's also history. History is the toughest, I would say, is the toughest subject because you need to have critical thinking, to actually, argue, present facts, say whether this so-called source is actually biased. That's why we learn the basics in lower secondary, and then when we actually move on to upper secondary, we'll learn in-depth subjects. Oh, sorry, I missed out on a few other subjects of lower secondary. So basically, we learn design and technology, food and nutrition, food and consumer education. There's also maths. Now, maths, they will actually learn algebra and those complex reasoning skills, those simple basic reasoning skills in secondary 1 and 2. More as a build-up to their upper secondary subjects. So the subjects in upper secondary are basically they act as a foundation for choices for courses in polytechnics, the ITs, and JCs. So let me start off with I think I won't touch on English because actually English is a more general subject. Let's say if a student tends to use a lot of complicated words, simple words or words for impact, I guess generally you will at least end up with a P4 or P3 for English. Just now the syllabus has been somewhat simplified. Not like last time 10 years ago we had paper 1 we had a composition writing for people. We had letter writing and composition writing for paper 1. And paper 2 was damn difficult because they had a lot of inference questions and also a summary in which we had to write like less than 150 words, which is seemingly impossible to do so. And this English syllabus, they actually simplified with simple text, a writing summary which is actually less than 80 words. Well, I guess that's about it for English, but it's somewhat you don't have to actually be a generalist to become a perfectionist in order to score for English, because it's only a one-off assessment, like what we all know. O and N levels, there's only a one-off assessment. Because all of us, like what I know, all of us are very flawed. We are not say our knowledge is not very diverse in a lot of areas. So, you know, some want to say, you know, not everyone can score well in English during their secondary school years. Those who are actually highly inclined in their, you know, English language, I think generally will score better in the papers. So let's move on to mathematics. So basically, in upper secondary, there will be two subjects: elementary mathematics and additional mathematics. So elementary mathematics basically, you know, hones the skills in basic maths, like simple, you know, there's simple maths, equations, algebra. There's also geometry, trigonometry, statistics, and probability. You know, cumulative frequency. There's also, you learn vectors, matrices. What else? Pythagoras theorem. What else? I don't know. Elementary maths actually basically, you know, builds your maths foundation, you know, in everyday life applications. Okay, so actually the paper for additional mathematics, there are two papers. One paper of 80 marks, which consists of short answer questions. Last time, 10 years ago, when I took the O levels, for paper 1, we were not allowed to actually bring in our calculators to, do those math questions. But now they allow. They allow in paper 1 right now. So in paper 2, the calculator is allowed, but this paper 2 is gonna be more tougher because it's actually longer and structured questions. So it's gonna cost 100 marks. So for additional mathematics, is basically more on application and more on reasoning. So I would say, you know, there will be topics on calculus, you know, differentiation and integration. There's also kinematics. There's also topics on logarithms, linear law. What else? Binomial theorem. You know, there's also plane geometry. More complex equations, you know, you need to have you need to actually learn the basics of elementary maths in order to learn additional maths, because additional maths acts somewhat as a foundation to actually higher level courses of learning, like like for example biotechnology, biomedical engineering, electrical engineering, electronics engineering, mechatronics engineering, mechanical engineering. There's also some calculus involved in business calculations, like rates of change and stuff like that. So to qualify, you know, in some autonomous schools, they actually, you know, advise they would force all students to take additional maths in the all express classes. But some schools, they actually have a certain criteria, like you need to have strong algebra and reasoning skills. Now, for example, like, you know, to qualify for additional maths, at the end of the year, you know, after their secondary 2 exams and their CAs, they will have to actually get around, say, 60, 65 or 70 marks for their, you know, secondary 2 elementary maths to actually qualify to take up additional maths. So they will have, you know, it's better to have that kind of score, to have a rigid foundation in elementary maths to go on to take up higher level maths, you know, like for example additional maths. Now additional maths is somewhat the requirement for the science stream. So if students want to take up H2 maths in the science stream, they have to have at least a pass in additional maths in order to qualify. If they fail additional maths, they will not be allowed to take up H2 maths. They'll be downgraded to H1 maths. So let me talk about the sciences now. We have in generally in sciences is basically we have the secondary schools, they have pure sciences and combined sciences. So let me start with the simplest version of science, which is actually combined science. Now, combined science, each section under physics, chemistry, and biology will contain about 80% of the pure science syllabus. That means most of the general topics will be taught in combined science, but the assessment will be easier. Which means to say the questions are much more easier than pure science. Okay, so for paper one, there will be actually 40 questions, 40 multiple choice questions. That means there will be 20 questions each on the respective sciences that you actually take. So you need to actually digest information for both sciences before you take paper one. So for there will be also papers 2, 3, and 4. So it's actually paper 2 is physics, paper 3 is actually chemistry, paper 4 is actually biology. And section A, it will consist of 45 marks. So section A will basically will include a number of compulsory questions which you need to answer. And section B, there will be 3 questions. I think it's more like 3 response questions or something, right? So you have to actually choose 2, and each question consists of 10 marks each. And for paper 5, there will be a practical test. So basically, this practical test will have a question on each of the respective sciences that you actually take. So for pure science is more like an in-depth, pure science is actually more of an in-depth subject. It is tested as a single subject on each of the sciences. So basically, there will be more topics than combined science. Like for example, physics, we have like for example, electronics. There's also electromagnetic induction. There's the information on transformers. What else? There's also students also study in pure physics, like for example, it's actually, let me try to recall. You'll actually study pressure. Pressure is actually an additional topic. There will be a manometer. You have to study the manometer. Generally, you have to study the manometer. Okay, there's also thermal physics, specific latent heat, you'll learn extra stuff as specific latent heat in thermal physics. There are equations for that, so you need to be very careful on dealing with them. There's also what else? Basically that's it. Okay, for pure chemistry, you'll learn extra topics like macromolecules, organic chemistry, percentage yield, percentage purity, ammonia, transition elements in metals, electrolysis, and what else? Stoichiometry, acids, bases, and salts. Yeah, these are the general topics we learn. There are actually more topics to be learned in pure chemistry. So, pure bio I'm going to mention because I didn't take up the subject. So, actually for the pure sciences, they will actually consist of 3 papers. Let's start off with the SPA assessment. This SPA assessment is actually a school practical-based assessment which takes a period of over 2 years. So there will be 2 assessments in Sec 3, 1 assessment at the beginning of the year at Sec 4. So generally the number of marks allocated for these 3 papers is that there are actually